Over the course of this and the next exercise, I'm going to introduce you to all 7 of the contrast modes. In this exercise, I'll start off with the primary 3 modes, which happen to appear first in the list. Those are overlay, soft light, and hard light, all of which are designed to mimic a combination of multiply and screen working together. If you get a font warning when you open this image, don't worry about it. Photoshop will still allow you to see the text as it was originally rendered. Notice in the background here, I have this photograph of this pile of leaves. So that will serve as the backdrop for each one of our effects. Now, if I switch over to my next layer comp, you can see, for the sake of demonstrating the darken and lighten modes, I've set up 2 side-by-side gradients, both of which appear on different layers. You can see here, one's called left, one's called right. We've got a black to white gradient over here on the left-hand side, and a black to white gradient over here on the right-hand side. I'll be applying the darken mode to the left-hand gradient and the lighten mode to the right-hand gradient because white is always the neutral color for any of the darken modes. That white right there in the center will drop away. And because black is always the neutral color for any of the lighten modes, this black edge in the center will drop away. And as a result, the 2 layers will appear to seamlessly merge together. Meanwhile, where the contrast modes are concerned, I'll be applying them to this large gradient that stretches across the entire width of the image, from black over here on the left-hand side to white over here on the right-hand side. And where all the contrast modes are concerned except for hard mix, it's the only exception, 50% gray is the neutral color right there, dead center. So let's see what this looks like. In this slide, I've gone ahead and applied the multiply mode to the left-hand gradient. So this left gradient here in the layers panel, you can see multiply is assigned. And then I've applied the screen mode to the right layer, which is the right-hand gradient, and you can see the screen mode applied as well. And so as a result, we get a darkening effect over here on the left, and we get a lightening effect over here on the right. And the point at which the 2 layers meet up with each other right there in the center, that's where the luminance levels entirely drop away. Compare that to the overlay mode. What you'll hear people say about the overlay mode is that it's that classic combination of multiply and screen. However, if you look at multiply and screen by comparison, and then you look at the overlay mode, they don't look very similar at all. We do have a bit of darkening happening over here on the left-hand side, and we have some lightening appearing over here on the right-hand side, but it's by no means as much as we were seeing with multiply and screen. Here's the thing. The basic blending formula associated with overlay is absolutely equivalent in terms of the way it works to multiply and screen. And yet the reason it looks so different is because overlay favors the composite background, in our case the leaves, over the active layer, in our case the gradient. And so as a result, it produces a muted effect by comparison to multiply and screen working together. And yet, it is the foremost of the contrast modes. It's super useful, as you'll see in future exercises. Now, if overlay ends up being too much, and you want something that's more subtle, then you'll want to switch to the next mode, which is soft light. And notice that we have some darkening over here on the left-hand side and some brightening over here on the right-hand side, but not nearly as much as we saw a moment ago with overlay. You can compare that to the original image. This is the base leaves image by itself. Notice that things brighten up over here on the left-hand side. They darken up over here on the right-hand side because this full grad layer is now turned off. All right, now by contrast, here's the hard light mode. So we're seeing an awful lot of darkness over here on the left-hand side and an awful lot of lightness over here on the right-hand side. Now it uses exactly the same formula as overlay. So it's really the exact same blending computation, and yet we end up getting a very different result. And that's because hard light favors the active layer, that is the gradient, instead of the background leaves. And as a result, overlay and hard light are said to be commuted versions of each other, just in case you ever hear that term. Now, just for comparison, here are the multiply and screen modes. So a lot of darkening happening over here on the left-hand side, a lot of brightening happening over here on the right-hand side. Notice that the gradients drop away uniformly, so very smooth effects, which is also true of the hard light mode, which you can see now. So hard light, if you were to think of anything as being the equivalent of multiply and screen working together, that would be hard light. If you prefer to turn the effect on its head and favor the background image instead of the active layer, then you would apply overlay. And if you're looking for something more subtle, then go with soft light. And that, in a nutshell, we'll be seeing more of them, but that's how the overlay, soft light, and hard light modes work here in Photoshop.